India, train crash kills dozens.
Investigators suspect a human error may be the cause of the incident. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alagao-Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. underscores the crucial role of the BSKE in the country's national polls. Senator Grace Poe voices her concern over the plan to change the name of the West Philippine Sea. More than 90 defense ministers gather at the Beijing Xiangshan Forum to discuss Global South security. Israel launches the second phase of its war against Gaza. And over 1,000 gather to commemorate the 2022 Itaewon crowd crush in South Korea. Mixed oil price adjustment is set to take effect tomorrow. According to the Department of Energy Oil Industry Management Bureau Assistant Director Rodela Romero, motorists will have to pay 45 centavos per liter more for gasoline. Meanwhile, diesel and kerosene per liter will go down by 1 peso and 25 centavos and 1 peso and 20 centavos respectively. The price adjustments will take effect at 6 in the morning.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. on Monday averred the significant impact of the results of the Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections, or BSKE. Natalie Pichi tells us more.
Among the earliest voters in the barangay elections this year was President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. As early as 7 o'clock in the morning, the President arrived at the Mariano Marcos Memorial Elementary School in Lacob, Batac City, Ilocos Norte. He immediately cast his vote in precinct number 36A, where he was registered. In an ambush interview, President Marcos urged registered voters to vote wisely in the Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections, or BSKE.
Ang aking payo lang sa ating mga kababayan ay huwag nyo naman itatapon ang inyong karapatan na makapili ng inyong mga barangay official. Dahil alam nyo naman po na ang mga barangay official ang mga kaharap ninyo araw-araw. Ito ang mga tinatakbuhan ninyo para makatulong sa inyong mga problema.
The barangay is the smallest and most basic political and administrative unit of government in the Philippines. It is the unit of the government that primarily promotes democracy and ideals of society. But Marcos underscores the importance of BSKE results, saying it would affect the midterm elections and the national polls.
It is that important. Alam naman natin ang sistema that I always say that as a national politician, I always say that of all the elected officials, it's the barangay officials who can actually tell you, I will deliver this many votes. Pag sinabi ng mga barangay na magde-deliver ako sa iyo ng 350 votes dito sa aking barangay, asahan mo 350 yun, totoo yun. Kaya napakahalaga ng resulta nito para sa aming mga politiko. Napakahalaga ang resulta ng barangay election. And that's why ang sa aming assessment kuminsan nagiging napakainit ang barangay election dahil talagang crucial yan at it is held at a very intimate personal level. And that's why sometimes nagkakainitan ng husto, kaya yun ang ating gustong iwasan.
He says if barangay officials can count on local voters to deliver winning votes, then they can be more effective at the national level, which in turn will have a crucial impact on the political landscape of the Philippines. Natalie Pichi reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. vows to combat vote buying in this year's barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections. The president expresses alarm by widespread reports, even in Ilocos Norte, of local candidates resorting to vote-buying practices. He urges the public to protect their voting rights by not selling their votes. President Marcos explains that selecting the right barangay officials is vital for efficient local government services, as these officials are the frontline responders to citizens' needs and concerns. He also vows that they will do their part in the government to enforce all laws that do not allow the use of vote buying as a part of the campaign.
Kaya kung idadaan lang sa bayaran, ay hindi kayo mawawala yung boses ninyo at hindi nyo maipili kung sino ba ang dapat talaga na mamuno dyan sa inyong barangay at sino ba ang talagang makakatulong sa inyo na harapin ang mga iba't ibang problema na pang-araw-araw na hinaharap ninyo na dinadala ninyo sa mga barangay official.
The Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, expects at least 75% voter turnout in this year's barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections. On Monday, COMELEC Chairman George Erwin Garcia said they are hoping to exceed the 70 to 71% voter turnout recorded in 2015 and 2018. Garcia also stated there is no reason not to vote today since there is a long break and holiday. COMELEC record shows that in this year's barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections, a total of 91,094,822 registered voters should have voted in 42,001 barangays all over the country.
At least 2 people were killed while 4 others suffered injuries in a shootout outside the voting center of Barangay Bugawas in Datu Odin, Suat, Maguindanao del Norte. The Army's 601st Brigade spokesperson Major Saber Balogan noted among those killed were supporters of a candidate running for the barangay polls. Authorities said injured victims were rushed to Cotabato Regional and Medical Center for first aid. Major Balogan added the shooting was connected to this day's barangay and youth polls. Meanwhile, police and military forces deploy their quick reaction team to secure the safety of the voting precinct. This is to ensure residents exercise their right to suffrage.
The Department of Agriculture is actively monitoring the prices of essential commodities and remains committed to promptly addressing market value chain fluctuations. Daily price monitoring shows that onion and garlic prices have remained steady in various cities, including Guadalupe and Las Piñas. In September and October, local red onions are priced between 140 to 142 pesos, while local white onions range from 125 to 130 pesos. Imported white onions are also available at 120 to 125 pesos. Imported garlic is priced between 125 to 140 pesos, while local garlic costs around 500 pesos. DA Assistant Secretary Arnel de Mesa has noted an increase in the price of certain crops, particularly potatoes, which he attributes to the series of typhoons that struck the country in July and August. However, he emphasized that the department is closely monitoring the situation and expects prices to stabilize with the arrival of the new supplies.
The Philippine government is considering the use of local construction materials for upcoming infrastructure projects following a recommendation from the Private Sector Advisory Council, or PSAC. The PSAC has called for government support to promote the local industry, highlighting the world-class quality of Filipino talents and products. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. welcomes this proposal as a step in the right direction. He has instructed the Department of Trade and Industry to collaborate with the PSAC in compiling a list of construction materials for these infrastructure projects. Furthermore, the PSAC reassures the President that local manufacturing industries are capable of producing materials that meet national standards designed to withstand the country's climate and natural disasters.
The Department of Migrant Workers has announced that about 62 Filipinos, including 2 infants, have arrived in the Philippines from Israel this Monday amid the escalating Israel-Hamas conflict. This marks the 4th batch of repatriates fleeing the conflict, including around 32 hotel workers, 28 caregivers, and the 2 newborns. The agency, in collaboration with the Overseas Welfare Workers Administration and the Department of Foreign Affairs, states that they will continue efforts to repatriate and monitor the safety of Filipinos in the Middle East. About 124 OFWs from Lebanon are also seeking repatriation due to heightened border tensions between Israel and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. The government assures its readiness to provide reintegration and post-arrival assistance to all the repatriated Filipinos.
Senator Grace Poe says the proposal to rename the West Philippine Sea to Sea of Asia must not diminish the country's territorial claims in the area. The Department of Justice, or DOJ, intends to use Sea of Asia instead of the West Philippine Sea in filing a complaint against China over environmental damages in Panatag Shoal and Spratly Islands next year. Poe believes it is imperative to seek opinions and views of maritime and international law experts when changing the West Philippine Sea's name. She says lawmakers must preserve the rights of the Filipinos to the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. Poe adds the Senate is supporting the DOJ's plan to file a complaint against China. She says the lawmakers will continue to push for a bigger budget for the Navy and the Coast Guard to better capacitate the Philippines forces in protecting the Philippine seas.
Coming up, China hosts defense ministers at the Xiangshan Forum. Australia's free trade deal with the EU collapses. And Israel launches the second phase of its ground offensive. Stay tuned, Mata ng Agila International will return for more global news.
Dumating ang taong masasabi mong tunay na kaibigan.
Yep! At kapag siya'y natagpuan na, huwag mo nang pakawalan.
Ang tunay na kaibigan, laging nandyan kahit kailan.
Handang gawin ang lahat, maging happy ka lang.
Gagawin ang April Song! Para sa'yo, para sa pamilya, at para sa bayan.
Tulad na lang ng inyong mga bagong kaibigan.
Tuwing umaga,
Love!
Kudipet
And everything!
Lunes hanggang Biyernes,
6:30 ng umaga
sa Net 25! Let's get there!
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. A weekend of chaos and violence in Bangladesh has ended with the country's main opposition leader charged with murder. The trouble has left at least 3 civilians and a police officer dead and scores injured. Jane Kathleen Gregorio reports.
Police have arrested the leader of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and 164 top party officials in the death of a police officer during the protest. They could face the death penalty if convicted, and the arrest could derail the country's general elections due in 3 months. Police say an officer had been hacked to death during protest on Saturday and accuse opposition activists of being responsible for the death. The demonstrations drew more than 100,000 people. They are demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. The rallies turned violent with police firing rubber bullets and tear gas at the crowds. Nearly 700 others have been arrested. On Sunday, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party called for a nationwide strike. Many markets remained closed in the capital city and public transportation was reduced. Riot police remain on alert for further outbreaks of violence. Jane Kathleen Gregorio from Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
China holds a 10th edition of Xiangshan Forum Monday to discuss its influence on the security of the global south. The Beijing Shangshan Forum is China's answer to the Shangri-La dialogues in Singapore. The said forum is expected to implement the concept of a global community of a shared future, as this reflects the event's theme: common security, lasting peace. China is seen wanted to propose the Global Security Initiative in its goal to eliminate the root causes of international conflicts. Security officials from more than 90 countries and international bodies attended the international event, as they will participate in a series of plenary sessions. Negotiations for a free trade agreement between the European Union and Australia have broken down, and the Australian government has stated that it could take years until negotiations resume. Australian Trade Minister Don Farrell engaged in discussions with the EU representatives during the G7 ministerial meeting in Osaka, Japan. Following these talks, Farrell expressed that they have been unable to make progress on the trade agreement. Australia and the EU have accused each other of being unwilling to compromise, leading to the collapse of the negotiations. The Australian government's primary demand is to secure greater access for Australian agricultural exporters to the EU market. Meanwhile, the EU, which has concerns about economic security in the aftermath of the Ukraine war, is interested in gaining access to critical Australian minerals.
Colombian opposition candidates swept the majority of elections for mayors, governors, and regional lawmakers. Analysts say the poll's outcome is a big defeat to Colombian President Gustavo Petro's leftist coalition. The 63-year-old Petro is an economist who was elected in August 2022. But the latest survey shows Petro achieved low poll ratings. Analysts expect the election's outcome will influence the 2026 presidential election. Some political experts also called the poll turnout a referendum on Petro's government. Meanwhile, Petro congratulated the winning candidates and said as rulers, it is their duty to respect the voice of the people. He also said he intends to work together with the winning candidates in fighting injustice and climate change.
President Ibrahim Raisi says Iran will ignore the warnings of the United States not to intervene in the war between Israel and Hamas. Raisi claims the West is demanding Iran not to interfere in the Middle East war, but the U.S. is allegedly reluctant to help end the hostilities. He also accused the United States and some unnamed European countries of obstructing the ceasefire in Gaza. He also alleged that Israel's expanded ground operations in Gaza were a failure. Raisi labels Israel's ground assault a second victory for the Hamas group.
United States House Speaker Mike Johnson believes Israel's needs are more urgent than Ukraine's. He says the U.S. lawmakers will move a standalone Israel funding bill this week in the House. He also reveals that other Republicans in the Senate support prioritizing Israel in its war with Hamas. The new U.S. House Speaker did not indicate when the House might discuss President Joe Biden's request for additional aid for Ukraine.
Israel has announced that the Israeli Defense Force has unleashed a second phase of the Gaza war as they press ground operations against Hamas militants.
במהלך הלילה הרחבנו את כניסת כוחות צה"ל לרצועה, והם הצטרפו לכוחות שכבר נלחמים. הלחימה הקרקעית בצפון רצועת עזה ממשיכה.
Gaza's people barely had an avenue of communication with the outside world as Israeli jets have continued to drop bombs on the Hamas-ruled Palestinian enclave, and military chiefs said that a long-threatened ground offensive was gearing up. Phone and internet services were cut off following the heavy bombing over the weekend, but Israel's chief military spokesperson declined to say whether Israel was targeting a telecommunications blackout in Gaza. Speaking at a press conference in Tel Aviv, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned Israelis to expect a long military campaign, but stopped short of calling the current Israeli incursions a full-scale invasion.
איראן תומכת בחמאס. אני חושב שזה 90% בערך מהתקציב הצבאי של חמאס בא מאיראן. היא מממנת, היא מארגנת, היא מנחה, היא מדריכה. אני לא יכול להגיד לך בהכרח שבפעולה הספציפית הזאת, ברגע הספציפית הזה, הם היו שותפים למיקרו-תכנון.
He reiterated Israel's appeal to Palestinian civilians to evacuate the northern Gaza Strip, where Israel was focusing its attack, and vowed that every effort would be made to rescue the more than 200 hostages held by Hamas. Israel has tightened its blockade on and bombarded Gaza for 3 weeks after the Islamist group Hamas has launched a full-scale offensive at the start of October. Western countries have generally backed what they say is Israel's right to self-defense, but there has been mounting international concern over the toll from the bombing and growing calls for a pause to allow aid to reach Gaza civilians.
כן, אנחנו חייבים לנצח את החמאס, כי המבחן הוא מבחן גם קיומי שלנו, ממש כך, אבל אני טוען שזה משפיע על כל הציביליזציה המערבית, על כל אלה שרוצים לראות את המאה ה-21 זזה למקום אחר, ואלה שרוצים להחזיר אותנו לימי הביניים המוקדמים.
Health authorities in the Gaza Strip of 2.3 million people say 7,650 Palestinians have already been killed in Israel's campaign to obliterate the militants. With many buildings reduced to rubble, shelter is hard to find, and Gazans are short of food, water, fuel, and medicines.
The USS Carney has shot down 4 missiles and multiple drones fired from Houthi-controlled Yemen. Saudi Arabia reportedly intercepted a 5th missile that was fired from the same origin. U.S. officials said the missiles and drones were headed north, possibly toward Israel.
The crew of the guided missile destroyer USS Carney, operating in the northern Red Sea earlier today, shot down 3 land attack cruise missiles and several drones that were launched by Houthi forces in Yemen. This action was a demonstration of the integrated air and missile defense architecture that we have built in the Middle East and that we are prepared to utilize whenever necessary to protect our partners and our interests in this important region. There were no casualties to U.S. forces and none that we know of to any civilians on the ground.
On October 27, what appears to be an errant Houthi drone or missile damaged a building in Taba, and a projectile or debris fell near Nuweiba, Egypt. Yemen's Houthi rebels, the preeminent military power in Yemen, are in danger of ensnaring themselves and Yemen in an escalatory loop that will lead to a re-acceleration of fighting in Yemen. While the Houthis do possess missiles and armed drones that can reach Israel, neither are likely to evade Israel's air defenses. The latest provocations by the Houthis will have no impact on the Israel-Hamas war, but they may provoke retaliatory strikes by the U.S. and its allies. It is probable that the Houthis will respond to any airstrikes by further escalating missile and drone launches, which may well target Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Both Saudi Arabia and the UAE remain involved in the war in Yemen, and both will be forced to respond to Houthi-led attacks, possibly with renewed airstrikes of their own.
A United Nations agency says civil order in Gaza is starting to break down because of a lack of humanitarian relief. The agency dealing with Palestinian refugees says thousands of desperate people stormed UN-operated warehouses and other aid distribution centers in Gaza, taking food and other basic survival goods. Thomas Likens has that story.
This is how desperate people have become. Displaced Palestinians grab what they can from this UN food supply center in the southern Gaza Strip. Humanitarian aid has begun to trickle into Gaza, but the UN says the system of convoys is flawed and it's slow. Speaking from Nepal, Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the world is witnessing a humanitarian catastrophe.
More than 2 million people with nowhere safe to go are being denied the essentials for life: food, water, shelter, and medical care, while being subjected to relentless bombardment.
And while Israel continues its military action against Gaza, a prosecutor from the International Criminal Court has a warning. Karim A. Khan says impeding relief supplies to the region is a war crime.
I want to underline clearly to Israel that there must be discernible efforts without further delay to make sure civilians receive basic food, medicine.
Hospitals are especially short of supplies. Some surgeries are being done without anesthetic. This ER nurse, her name is Rasha, is at this hospital where they're receiving some supplies. But she says they're getting nowhere near the amount of aid that they need.
It is a drop in the ocean, but it is the third truck that we are offloading today.
And while supplies trickle in through the back door, hundreds of patients pour into the main entrances of hospitals. For those who have survived and have no injuries, the big challenge is getting food. Here in Rafah, people line up for hours at this bakery, hoping it doesn't run out of bread before they get to the front of the line. The humanitarian situation is likely to worsen in coming days as Israel intensifies its attack on Gaza with its goal of wiping out Hamas. Thomas Eyelikeness from Atanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Up next, multiple coal miners have died in a coal mine gas explosion. Workers around the United States are taking collective action for fair wage. And thousands gather in Taiwan to commemorate the crowd crush incident. Mata ng Agila International will be back after a short break.
Best Public Affairs Program. And the star goes to Open for Business Net 25.
It is a signal to the world that we are open for business.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos every Sunday, 9 p.m.
Expose, viral at exclusive. Mga reklamo at problema na napapanood at na-post sa social media. Ngayon, aaksyonan na rin ng Responde. Kaya kung meron po kayong nais sa isumbong, mag-text sa 0915-415-1035 o mag-email sa responde@net25.com. Pwede rin kayo magpadala ng mensahe sa ating pong Facebook page at Net25TV. Walang problema na hindi mabibigyan po ng solusyon. Basta't may agad na Responde. Sabado, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi. Dito lamang sa Net25.
As Acapulco struggles to recover from Hurricane Otis, the death toll has risen to 48. And those who remain behind in the Pacific Beach Resort City are without power, water, and telecommunications. Arlene Ocampo has more.
Much of Acapulco is in ruins after the Category 5 hurricane raged through the region. This is what is left of the once picturesque tourist haunt. Streets are littered with debris and mud from Otis's fury. Families have begun to bury the dead, and the search for victims continues. As of Sunday, 36 people are still missing. Rebuilding Acapulco is going to be expensive. Initial estimates put that damage at about $15 billion. More than 250,000 homes, 600 hotels, and 120 hospitals sustained damage in the storm. The Mexican government has dispatched a security force of 17,000 to the region after reports that supermarkets had been looted. Water and food is being distributed in the city, which is home to 780,000 people. Mexican authorities say Otis is the most powerful storm ever to strike the Pacific coast. Arlene Ocampo from Atanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Still in Mexico, President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador vows support for victims of Hurricane Otis.
No van a quedarse desamparados. Vamos a apoyar a todos los que perdieron sus viviendas.
But its critics say Lopez Obrador's government is also releasing little information about the dead and the injured. The opposition also claims the Mexican president is suppressing news about looting and failure to deliver sufficient aid. But Lopez Obrador lambasted his critics, accusing the opposition of trying to exploit the situation ahead of next year's presidential elections. He avers there is a sufficient budget for the needs of the victims of Hurricane Otis.
Como era antes. Ya hay presupuesto suficiente para atender todas las necesidades del pueblo, vamos a ayudar a todos los acapulqueños, a todos los afectados y vamos de nuevo a poner de pie Acapulco. Ese es mi compromiso.
A deadly explosion at a coal mine in Kazakhstan has left at least 45 people dead. 4 others are still missing following the blast Saturday. Percy Parlade has the details.
The accident is the worst in the Central Asian country's post-Soviet history. Rescuers say there is little chance of finding the remaining miners alive due to the lack of ventilation and the force of the explosion. The tragedy came after a series of deadly incidents at ArcelorMittal mines, and it has prompted the nationalization of the company's local office. Many have welcomed the government's takeover, angered by the company's safety record. The Luxembourg-based company has owned the mines since 1995. In a statement, it acknowledges there have been a number of deadly accidents over the past 2 years. The company goes on to say, unfortunately, their operation poses a high safety risk due to the complicated geology. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, about 200 miners have died in Kazakhstan, the vast majority at ArcelorMittal sites. Percival Parlade for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The death toll from a train crash in India has now reached 13, with 39 others injured. Investigators suspect that human error may be the cause of this crash in the southeastern state of Andhra Pradesh. The accident took place on Sunday when a passenger train came to a stop due to a break in an overhead cable. Another train collided with a stationary train from the rear, causing the derailment of 2 carriages. More than 90 people were on board the 2 coaches that were struck by the second train. This incident occurred just months after India's state-run railway system experienced its most severe crash in 2 decades, resulting in the loss of 292 lives.
A man has been taken into custody for questioning regarding his purported involvement in detonating homemade bombs at a gathering in the southern Indian state of Kerala. The explosions resulted in the tragic deaths of 2 women and left many others injured. Currently, 17 individuals are in intensive care, with 5 in critical condition. Indian Health Minister Veena George had previously reported that a 12-year-old girl with severe burns was also in critical condition. Dominic Martin, who claimed responsibility for the attacks in a video, surrendered himself at a local police station shortly after noon. Chief Minister Vijayan expressed the seriousness with which the police are treating the incident. A special team of 20 members is leading the investigation, and further details are expected to emerge during an all-party meeting scheduled for Monday morning.
A Nigerian oil production and storage vessel, Trinity Spirit, has sunk off the country's coast following a fire and subsequent explosion. The extent of the crude oil spill into the sea and the cause of the explosion remain unclear. Concurrent efforts are being made to contain and mitigate any potential environmental damage resulting from this incident. The vessel was carrying 10 crew members, all of whom are currently missing in the aftermath of the incident. Investigations are now in progress, with a primary focus on search and rescue operations to locate the missing crew members.
A Muslim pediatrician was brutally stabbed multiple times in the streets of Conroe, Texas in broad daylight. Police reported that Dr. Talat Jehan Khan was sitting at a picnic table with her dog when an assailant attacked. Law enforcement officials arrested the 24-year-old Miles Joseph Friedrich and sent him to the Montgomery County Jail. The Council on American Islamic Relations said it is looking closely into the investigation of the stabbing. Conroe police said that the investigation is still underway.
Meanwhile, violence continues unabated in the Central American country of Costa Rica. The homicide rate this year has already surpassed last year's total. Mark Castillo tells us more.
Organized crime and drug trafficking are behind the soaring death count. According to the country's judicial investigation officials, there have been 743 homicides this year. That's 200 more than all of last year. Officials say children are among the victims after being caught in the crossfire of gang wars. Police do what they can to contain the trouble. Here, security forces are carrying out an anti-drug raid on the outskirts of the capital of San Jose. Earlier this year, Costa Rican President Rodrigo Chavez promised to do his utmost to combat high crime rates. At that time, he stopped short of declaring a state of emergency. He says that's something he wants to avoid, adding civil freedoms are a source of national pride. Mark Castillo from Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In recent months, the U.S. has experienced a wave of union activism with workers from various industries flexing their collective muscle. New York correspondent Bobby Soriano reports on the changing labor landscape.
In the United States, there is a significant surge in union activism, with various sectors, from automobile manufacturers, the tech space, and even Hollywood, all experiencing unrest. This wave of union activity is a result of the tight employment market, providing workers with a rare opportunity to negotiate for better work conditions. The current labor dynamics are considered the most advantageous for unions since the 1930s, marking a departure from a period where employers held the upper hand. Wages have been stagnant for years, but the pandemic and low unemployment have bolstered worker leverage, leading to increased organizing campaigns across various companies. While some workers, like those from Starbucks and Amazon, have voted in favor of representation, it has been challenging to secure contracts with their employers. Nevertheless, the collective action by workers in different sectors has often prompted concessions from employers, resulting in potential benefits like higher wages, improved working conditions, job security, and other favorable terms. The recent rise in consumer prices due to inflation has further catalyzed worker demands for higher pay, with a 3.7% increase year-over-year in consumer prices reported in September. The Federal Reserve continues to combat inflation, having raised interest rates 11 times since March of 2022, as it tries to bring inflation down to its 2% target. August saw the United States losing 4.1 million days worth of work due to strikes, the highest level in 23 years. Notably, the United Auto Workers Union initiated a historic strike involving Detroit's big three automakers, Ford, Stellantis, and General Motors, demanding increased pay and restored benefits, given the record profits of these companies. UAW President Shawn Fain's strategy has yielded gradual improvements in company offers, and the strike has expanded to include approximately 45,000 auto employees. Last week, tentative agreements with Ford and Stellantis were announced, featuring a 25% wage hike subject to member ratification. Similar agreements and negotiations have taken place in other industries, with unions in the defense, airline, and healthcare sectors securing various benefits, including pay increases. The surge in union activism is changing the landscape of labor relations in the United States, with workers capitalizing on their newfound leverage to demand better conditions. In New York, Bobby Soriano from Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Protests have been rocking the country of Panama since President Laurentino Cortizo announced to repeal a mining contract law. The continuous demonstrations and roadblocks left residents in a difficult situation. Shelves of the markets of Panama City are almost empty. There are also local reports saying other areas are now experiencing shortages of food, fuel, and medicine. Traders say there is nothing left to sell to the public.
Aquí no queda nada de vegetales, que es lo que más manejamos. Tenemos problemas ahorita mismo con lo que es papa, repollo, lechuga, apio, zanahoria. Tenemos problemas con la yuca, tenemos problemas con el plátano, tenemos problemas con todo lo que viene del interior de la República hacia acá, hacia el área metropolitana.
No hay huevos en los supermercados, no hay carnes, por las diversas protestas a nivel nacional, ¿no? Entonces siento que el pueblo está resintiendo ese tema del desabastecimiento porque el gobierno no ha querido escuchar a las protestas ni el llamado a derogar el contrato ley.
Russian police have taken over an airport in the predominantly Muslim Dagestan region and arrested 60 people after hundreds of anti-Israel protesters stormed the facility when a plane from Israel arrived. The Makachkala airport, which is located in the country's regional capital, showed the protesters waving Palestinian flags, breaking down glass doors, and running through the airport shouting chants in support of Palestine. Another group was seen trying to topple over a patrol truck. 20 people were wounded at the airport before security forces contained the unrest. None of the plane's passengers were harmed during the scuffle. The unrest followed several other anti-Israel incidents in recent days in Russia's North Caucasus region in response to Israel's war against Hamas militants in Gaza.
Grieving families of the victims included in the 2022 crowd crush accident of Itaewon in Seoul, South Korea, has yet to receive justice as officials refuse to take accountability for the accident. The case of the deadly crowd crush accident in South Korea was described as one of the worst disasters in the country. This was over a year ago when Seoul's Itaewon neighborhood became the ground that inflicted injuries to 196 people and claimed the young lives of nearly 160 victims. However, investigations and ongoing prosecutions of the officials have not yet given answers to whoever is responsible for the fatally uncontrolled crowd. The families that seek justice marched from Itaewon to the City Hall last Sunday to mourn their lost loved ones and protest for accountability from the local and central government. This is due to accusations that President Yoon Suk-yeol's decision to allow the National Police Agency to conduct an investigation over their own case presented various flaws. As of now, there are no senior officials that are held responsible for the Itaewon crush, and arrested mid-level officials charged with neglect of duty were released on bail.
Coming right up, GM self-driving taxis might have their licenses revoked. The Gypsy King Tyson Fury wins the battle of the baddest. And let's pay tribute to the life and legacy of Matthew Perry. Catch more news in business, tech, sports, and entertainment when we return.
Nagbabalik ang Lutong Daza dito sa Net25. Ako si Sandy Daza.
At ako naman si Patwi Daza, and we are the Cooking Cousins. Asahan nyo ang mas nakakatakam na mga recipes, mas malakas na halakhakan.
At tawag ko rito put-put eh.
Put-put. At syempre mga celebrity guests na game na game.
Espresso mo yun.
Kita-kits sa kusina. Lutong Daza, Saturdays, 11 a.m. sa Net25.
Lagi mong kasama. Magandang araw, magandang araw.
A routine patrol with 4 bots and chases. He's awoke in the strangest of places. Earth was their home now, and in addition, Optimus Prime gave them this mission.
Buckle up for the Rescue Bot's new missions this November. Can the bots defeat Dr. Morocco inside a video game?
Ramming speed!
And stop Madeline Pinch from turning Griffin Rock into an expensive resort?
Tourists love robots.
The bots save the Burns family from angry zoo animals.
Rescue bots, roar to the rescue!
And Chase gets elected as the mayor.
this is my responsibility.
Rescue Bots. Assemble at Net 25 every Saturday at 9:30 a.m.
California regulators have revoked the license of a robo-taxi service owned by General Motors after determining its driverless cars that recently began transporting passengers throughout San Francisco are a dangerous menace. The California Department of Motor Vehicles' indefinite suspension of the Cruise robo-taxi service comes just 2 months after another state regulator, the Public Utilities Commission, approved an expansion that authorized around-the-clock rides throughout the city. The suspension stems from a gruesome incident in which a human-driven vehicle hit a female pedestrian and threw her into the path of a cruise car. The driverless cruise car hit her, stopped, and then tried to pull over, dragging her approximately 20 feet. California's Department of Motor Vehicles, or DMV, says in a statement that it has determined that Cruise's vehicles are not safe for public operation and that the company's misrepresented safety information about its autonomous vehicle technology. The DMV says Cruise will either have to appeal its decision or provide information about how it has addressed its technology's deficiencies in order to win back its permit. President Vladimir Putin announced that Russia is aiming to have the first segment of its own space station in orbit by 2027. In a meeting with space industry officials, Putin also vowed to continue with Russia's lunar program. Putin's remarks came in despite Russia's failure in August of its first moonshot in 47 years. Putin previously declared Russia's intention to withdraw from the International Space Station, where its cosmonauts have been a permanent presence.
Вся станция. На один из этих сегментов мы уже сегодня смотрели. Когда может быть?
Preparations are in high gear as Formula One racing is about to hit the streets of Las Vegas. With more on how the city is being transformed, here's Anna Cui and Nevada.
F1 Las Vegas Grand Prix takes place in less than 3 weeks, and construction continues to transform a good portion of the Las Vegas Strip. Now, right behind me, we're standing actually in front of the F1 pit building, and they say this is where the race will start and end. As you can see, there is still much to complete, and workers are saying that they are working 24/7 to complete the construction. This pit building is said to have garages, suites, and a rooftop deck. It also includes a grand entrance with escalators and a large video screen. It's the only permanent structure of all that is being built for the Grand Prix. Skyboxes and grandstands temporarily stand at various parts of the racetrack, including the lakefront sidewalk in front of the Bellagio Hotel, otherwise known for its iconic water fountain attraction. People can't miss the lighting trusses that run along the 3.8-mile track, as well as the concrete barriers that now line the streets. We caught up with a couple of Las Vegas residents reacting to the ongoing event preparation.
Well, it's affected traffic because I go along the street a lot for work. A lot of traffic, but I'm sure it's for a good cause. You know, I'm very excited for everything that's going to happen.
Like taking Uber and Lyft here, in the city, and I guess it's kind of hard because it takes a lot of time, especially from the airport, like usually 45 minutes. So unfortunately, that's what we have to deal with.
Local residents and visitors say they've never seen so much road work happening on the Las Vegas Strip, including temporary bridge installations for access to commuters, especially during the week of the race. Despite the disruption to their daily commute, even local residents understand the economic impact F1 will bring to the city. Experts say it will help bring in international travel, which is one portion of the local economy that still has not returned to its pre-pandemic numbers.
it's good for the city. A lot of like jobs and commercial tourists coming, and we'll see. We're excited for this amazing race happening in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I have friends from Korea that are excited to come over here to see F1.
The Las Vegas Grand Prix is another high-profile sport event for Southern Nevada just ahead of the Super Bowl. F1 is expected to make an economic impact, bringing in around $1.2 billion into the local economy just in the first year alone. Anna Cui, Las Vegas, Nevada, reporting from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Former UFC fighter Ngannou almost delivers one of boxing's biggest upsets as he gives the heavyweight champion a scare. Vin Pasqua has the score.
WBC heavyweight world champion Tyson Fury has beaten former UFC fighter Francis Ngannou on a split decision in a non-title fight in Saudi Arabia that almost delivered one of boxing's biggest upsets. Fury, the unbeaten holder of one of the sport's most prestigious belts, narrowly avoided a first defeat at the hands of a 37-year-old opponent who had never boxed professionally before but went through the full 10 rounds with some swagger. Ngannou, whose UFC record was 17-3, knocked down the Briton in the third round with a left hook. Although the 35-year-old self-styled Gypsy King was able to see out the round. But this was a missed opportunity at a major upset. Ngannou landed only 6 of 38 punches in the final 2 rounds according to CompuBox, compared to 14-37 for Fury. Fury landed more punches all over, landing 59 of his 71 strikes, but Ngannou hit the mark with more significant strikes, landed at 32 out of his 37. Fury continues to remain 34-0 and won no contest with 24 knockouts, but was under no pressure at the near upset. When asked about the incident and the possibility of his loss, the Gypsy King replied by saying that the former UFC fighter's stellar boxing performance definitely wasn't part of the script. Fury said there was no rematch clause, but he would like to fight Ngannou again down the line after an undisputed title fight with Ukraine's IBF, IBO, WBO, and WBA champion Alexander Usyk. Reporting for sports, Vin Pasqua for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
R&B singer Chris Brown faces another legal issue over alleged assault. Chris Brown is being sued by a man named Abe Dew, who claims that the singer beat him up at a nightclub in England. The man said Brown smashed a tequila bottle on his head and then continued to assault him as he laid there unconscious. The injuries were allegedly so bad that the man ended up in the hospital with what he said may be permanent injuries. Brown, for 15 years now, has continuously been involved in various scuffles and legal battles, from assaulting then-girlfriend Rihanna to engaging in a brawl with Drake to punching Frank Ocean. In 2013, he was arrested for a felony, the same year that he entered a rehabilitation facility. In 2014, the singer was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. A month after the diagnosis, he was kicked out of the rehab facility and 2 months later was sentenced to 131 days in jail for a violation of his probation. Brown, after an early release, continued with a firestorm of legal issues, ranging from a sexual assault allegation in 2018 to possession of restricted species. Matthew Perry, the beloved actor who starred as Chandler Bing on Friends, has died. He was 54. Christina Gira has the story.
Perry died in an apparent drowning accident at his Los Angeles home on Saturday. Police in Los Angeles are investigating Perry's death, where a law enforcement source told reporters that no foul play was suspected. Born in Williamstown, Massachusetts, to an actor father and a journalist mother, Perry went to live with her in Ottawa, Canada as a youngster. His first film role was while still in high school, playing opposite River Phoenix in the 1988 film A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon. But it was being cast as an affable and sarcastic Chandler on the sitcom Friends in 1994 that made him famous. The quirky role earned him a Primetime Emmy nomination in 2002. He also enjoyed 4 other nominations for the prestigious TV Acting Award, including 2 for his turn as Joe Quincy on The West Wing. The verified Instagram account for Friends posted a heartfelt tribute to Perry, writing, "We are devastated to learn of Matthew Perry's passing. He was a true gift to us all." Maggie Wheeler, who played Chandler's on and off again girlfriend Janice on the show, wrote on her Instagram, "What a loss." Perry is survived by his parents and siblings. Christina Gira from Matana Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
It's Monday, and to start the week, here's a quote from American memoirist, poet, and civil rights activist Maya Angelou. Life is an ongoing adventure. The sooner we realize that, the quicker we will be able to treat life as art, to bring all our energies to each encounter, to remain flexible enough to notice and admit when what we expected to happen did not happen.
And I think with all the news and everything that's going on lately, we can say that life is truly short. Things will happen unexpectedly. But when things come into our lives, the highs and the lows, I think we have to find time to embrace it.
And it's different levels of appreciation, but pretty much we have to appreciate everything. Roll with the punches, ride with the waves, embrace what's good, and everything else charge to experience.
I love that. I love that for this Monday. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie, Alagao-Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point. Thank you for choosing Mata ng Agila International as your trusted news source, keeping you connected to the world and on point with stories from around the globe. Follow, like, and subscribe to @Net25 TV.